Everyone, welcome to the Rainbow Pill. Today we're going to be talking about Ayn Rand and her philosophy or attempts at philosophy. Two important works. She chose to go about philosophy through a narrative lens. So these are both works of fiction, stories. That a lot of the thickness of these. This one's pretty well used. A lot of the thickness of this is used. I think there's like a 30 or 40 page long stretch where it's just a soliloquy, if you will, where they just go through just a long like lecture of philosophy. One character just goes on and on. She's probably the most criticized philosopher. A lot of people won't even let you use that moniker with her. It's her philosophy, but we're going to call it a philosophy. It centers around, she has another nonfiction work called The Virtue of Selfishness, which is a little controversial to some. And we're going to talk a little bit about that, what it kind of means from a Christian perspective. I'll tell you first a little bit about my history. So I read these books. First, I read Atlas Shrugged, which actually she wrote after The Fountainhead. So The Fountainhead came first. It's about like essentially, long story, very, very short. It's about an architect who is, particularly exceptional and who does work that is kind of not appreciated, but also taken advantage of by the wider community and the government. And it kind of just goes back and forth with that tension. Atlas Shrugged is more about a wide world of capable humans operating at a very high level of, creation in terms of like, what humans can create. The main protagonist runs a train company, and basically it's a world that is rapidly becoming one of communal ineptitude, and the people who are capable kind of remove themselves from society. Spoiler alert, sorry, should probably add that, but they kind of remove themselves from society to their own little commune, which is the funniest words to use because communalism is something that she's not really into. But there's a lot more to explain there. Obviously, it's definitely worth a read. When I read them when I was 18, I could not put it down. I remember reading it in physics class, not paying attention to the lesson at all, AP Physics, which I should have been paying attention to. But I just was weeping because I was just reading just some very honest words that messages I hadn't received yet in life, just about living, about the life and death. Ended up leading me to atheism. I particularly credit these books as the main reason I headed towards atheism. And the reason is, and I'll try and outline more of this philosophy as we go, but it saw sacrifice and anything that led you to like almost mandated sacrifice, anything that said you need to give yourself up for whatever reason X, that is evil and bad and wrong. Because it essentially, she set it up in terms of life and death. If you have your life, if you are my senior quote for my yearbook was straight from Ayn Rand. It was kind of a shortened version. This is a paraphrase, but I swear by my life and my love of it to never live my life for another man, nor ask another man to live for me. So the idea is, if you're living your life for someone else, sure, you may help them, but it's directly depleting your life. And if we're all, just always helping each other and out of a mandate to help each other, that's we're losing more net value than we're giving to other people, and it's not a sustainable system. Whereas instead we focus those energies, instead of on other people in a diminishing way, we focus those energies on ourselves and that will be the best thing for everyone. Those ideas, I think, still reverberate in a lot of ways into the modern Republican versus Democrat, conservative versus liberal ideals of modern society. And I want to get into that more because I see that pattern play out in a lot of ways. We're also going to talk about how return to Christianity, and still have these on my bookshelf. All right. That's kind of what this is about today. Because I think there's a lot of good in here. I just think Ayn Rand made two major mistakes, and that is understanding Jesus Christ and understanding the family. I remember when I was reading these books, I was like, she doesn't really get into family, especially direct family, like mother, father, and son or daughter, or marriage. She gets into marriage a little bit, but like you could kind of tell that she didn't have good experiences with these things to truly understand what a righteous version of a family was. And I just remember thinking, yeah, her philosophy kind of falls apart when you start to deal with family. And so I've obviously put more to that now. And so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then Jesus, she would essentially say, her word for that was mysticism. Anything that you couldn't touch, was mysticism. And that basically, if you're a Christian, you're following mysticism that tells you to sacrifice your life, and that is going to lead you towards death. It's very unregulated in that it's made up. That was kind of her idea. That was, at first I was very resistant to that idea, but eventually it just wore down on me. And the other truths she presented were so compelling, and I still find them, truthful. But you'll see, Satan works a lot of times with truth, and then slips in that little bit of poison. And that's a pattern I learned from these books here. So, excuse me a moment. This is especially good to talk about during Lent. Lent is a time to build charity in one's soul and life and being. And, that idea of charity is much bigger than, giving to a charity, let's say, right? But giving to a charity is a great analogy when you deal with Ayn Rand's stuff. What's key to note is that Ayn Rand was all about charity, but not making it mandatory, not making it she supported giving charity if it brought you pleasure, which I also don't think that's quite right. But it's this idea of mandatory charity. You must give to other people or you're a bad person, that she had a problem with, which I think to some degree is fair. I think as Christians, though, we are called to charity, so to speak. But that's, she didn't quite get that. She was, I think she had a good argument to say, hey, no one should be making other people give things. There's no guilt involved in not giving charity. I think that's true. I think that's right. Especially outside of a Christian perspective. I think we should all step into the Christian perspective and really make our decisions based on Christian morality. But certainly in the system she's created that ignores Christian morality, I think she definitely was spot on, and it really reverberated with me. But let's talk about this idea of making decisions that lead to death, in terms of the net loss. If we're all giving to each other, helping each other, if I'm spending my time raising up my fellow man, and that is, depleting my life, does that work for society or not? And how I look at it in my modern life, how I've absorbed and processed these ideas is this idea of short-term compassion versus long-term compassion. And compassion being good, then I break it into these two categories of short-term compassion versus long-term compassion. And a great thought experiment to ask is, you see guy asking for change on the side of the road. Do you empty out your pockets entirely? Do you give him $1? Or do you ignore it? Or what do you do? Do you give to a local charity, that helps people in that situation? And I think when the inclination is to, say give $1 now, or as Christians, are we called to give everything to that guy on the side of the road? I think everyone needs to answer that for themselves. I think there's definitely some passive thought that says yes, and it's pretty scary to encounter that. But when you look at it from this kind of Ayn Rand idea and from the ideas I've developed from it, there is a sustainable way to be compassionate and to help people, where we're not just thinking about that guy on the side of the road. We're thinking about what can be good for generations of people and much larger populations of people who may be suffering. When we the idea is, if a person is out there who could cure world hunger or put a serious dent in it, certainly that's possible, that someone is out there with that capability, with that ingenuitive flair. But if they are, say, spending time, 9 to 5 working in a homeless shelter, they may not have time to dedicate to benefiting the world in a much bigger way. And so, but, is that homeless shelter work they're doing bad? No. But is the lack of them applying themselves to a much bigger picture is a bit sad, a bit tragic, and Rand would jump in there and say, okay, if that person was just working with their own ingenuity, focusing on themselves, focusing on how their own ingenuity could benefit themselves, and if indeed everyone was doing that, then the ingenuity of a person, can be presented on a marketplace to others who are also benefiting off their own ingenuity. They can start trading with it. And then we have, modern inventions that are helping everyone. A lot of these ideas come up for me with like healthcare. Hold on just 1 minute. So if the microphone is solid, that means it's on, right? Yes. Okay, good. I just want to make sure I wasn't wasting all this. But a great thing is healthcare. So especially we look at these drug companies that pump up prices. Absolutely terrible, right? A lot of people think that. I see that. I understand it. People are diabetic and they have high prices for insulin. It seems extremely unfair. There's a lot wrong with the pharmaceutical industries of the country, and in many ways there's a lot of evil there, but they are also responsible for the ingenuity that leads to medical advancements, to drugs and things that help people that did not exist at one time. And so Ayn Rand brings this gambit really to us, where it's like, do we just kill a drug company or severely maim a drug company by making them provide their drugs at a certain price? Or do we allow them to set a price that interests themselves, and so that they continue to produce advancements that also interest themselves, but in turn also benefit everyone? I hope that makes sense. That kind of short term, we can help everyone now, but it's going to completely drain our resources. Or the long term, we're going to concentrate on ourselves right now so that we can trade and benefit and grow and have a medical advancement, even if it means it's harder for a person right now. And it's almost turning sacrifice on its head a little bit when you start to think, okay, I may undergo a bit more suffering right now. My family might undergo a little more suffering right now for not giving, buying into or voting for a new socialist system where everyone's taken care of. If we're not voting in that socialist system where everyone's taken care of right now, that actually may benefit future generations of children and their children at the expense of it being a little harder for me. And so in a way, that's a sacrifice too. It's stuff I'm still navigating. We're under the moniker of gluten-free, gluten-free, exploring into unknown territory. There's probably a lot I have to learn about charity and sacrifice. But here's where I am now. Here's the thoughts I've gained from this Russian Jew named Ayn Rand, who was fleeing, really the terrors of socialism that she saw develop in her country, taught herself English to a way where she's producing well-edited prose much better than I could at a staggering page count. Some people argue that it's not a very compelling narrative. I did have a hard time going back to it and reading it again, but when I was 18, it was a page turner for me. So there you have it. What else do I have here? Yeah, I think I covered most of it. It's one other thing to really get into is selfishness versus greed. People bring up this idea of greed. As illustrated by Ayn Rand, greed is when you cross a threshold of selfishness, where you begin to start violating the same rules that the selfishness is in place for in the first place. When you start to get greedy, that's when you start to desire other people living for your benefit. So there's the rule is, hey, I'm not gonna live for anyone else. I'm not going to, have my life completely dedicated to anyone else. Greed is the other way, where you are demanding or ensuring or establishing people living their lives for you. And so it goes both ways. And I don't think oftentimes people conflate, selfishness with greed, especially in terms of Ayn Rand. And I just want to draw that line there. And I said I talked about how she got family wrong. That's exactly it. In the context of righteous family, Ayn Rand completely misses the boat, because I'm completely living for my family, for my daughters. There's no sort of trade going on here. It's really, it kind of still fits into that Randian philosophy where you are, I am giving the charity to my family out of pleasure, but that's not the only reason. There's a higher purpose to it as well. So, yeah, I guess with the Rainbow Pill, we always try to bring hope to whatever topic we're talking about, and not despair. The hope is Jesus Christ, and maybe I haven't fully expressed how Jesus's messake really defies Ayn Rand, but that is the message of it, where when you can begin to take the steps of faith towards Christ, you can you're not in this desolate wasteland of these life or death decisions where life or death is all that matters. You have something more, and that is the morality of Christ, of everlasting life, of the God's intention for us as humans. And that's what Ayn Rand completely misses the boat on. And part of the evidence, I think, plays out in the struggle she had in her personal life, kind of. And this is what a lot of people will criticize Ayn Rand with, is that, did she live up to her philosophy? And in some ways, she was, she created some great works, but she completely failed in her personal life. And that's kind of the missing piece. A lot of people point to a lot of other criticisms of Ayn Rand, I think, are generally kind of wrong or off. I think the good criticism is to say, hey, she completely missed the boat on personal relationships, and close relationships at that. So, there's room for us all to understand more, both of, about Ayn Rand, sure, but she's kind of not, she's the focus of this video, but you shouldn't focus on her that much in your life, I don't think. I've gone down that path, and I don't think about it as much now. There are just some patterns to know, but I think the important things to think about and explore more, for me, maybe for you too, are sacrifice and charity. What's the right way to do it as a Christian? What does God, the gospel, ask for us to do? I have some ideas that I'm just not totally sure on. To some degree, I have. Well, it's still a work in progress, trying to understand that. There's that guy who comes up to Jesus and says, hey, I'm living the perfect life. I am virtuous in every way. And Jesus says, yeah, you basically are, man. Great. Now give up everything you own. And he's like, don't want to do that. I think that's really the place that I want to head in my life, where establish that virtuous life and then make the step to really give up everything. So that's kind of where I'm at, what I'm thinking. Let me know what you think in the comments. Please like and subscribe. I just, I like hearing more perspectives on where I'm wrong or where I'm right. Haven't got any yet, but would love to hear it. So, and Ayn Rand can generally be a pretty controversial topic. But until then, let's all hope to grow in charity this Lenten season, and to learn more about God and His will for our lives. Have a great day, guys.